Russia has accustomed the world to the fact that whatever it spews out, it's all shame and disgrace, from cars to religion. It's all just a ball of cringe and the devil.
But today we, by some twist of fate, have ended up in such a period of history. It started roughly in the 19th century when women demanded equal rights with men, including the right to vote. Then, for some reason, women wanted to get into power. Why would a woman need power? Explain it to me, I just can't understand. It's some kind of illness, some kind of infection, some sort of plague.
In Russia, everything is fake. Everything is made out of sticks, even the opposition. After the latest major exchange between Moscow and the West, Putin got his killers back, while well-known Russian opposition figures were released. Yashin, Kara-Murza, and Pivovarov.
I am a Russian citizen. I am a Russian politician. I am a Russian patriot. My goal is a free and happy Russia.
And our collective task, both for those individuals who are now truly free and those who were already free before us, to bring genuine hope and innovative ideas to those people who are currently under significant pressure, to clearly show them what we can effectively do, little by little.
The civilized world welcomed the Russian Mandelas with hope and even excitement. Everyone thought, these are truly worthy fighters against the regime. They were not afraid to openly oppose the Kremlin, openly condemned the criminal war, and bravely went to prison for their beliefs.
The investigation claims that in April, during a live broadcast on his YouTube channel, Yashin spread false information that the Russian army killed civilians in the Ukrainian city of Bucha.
But the euphoria didn't last long. It lasted only until the moment the newly freed prisoners opened their mouths. What poured out of the liberal opposition's mouth stunned even the most die-hard optimists. Because the three from the Magadan box unanimously repeated all the Kremlin's propaganda talking points and began demanding from Ukraine and the West exactly what Putin demands. That is, peace on any terms, lifting sanctions from Russia, and stopping support for Ukraine.
What? Really?
Each of these so-called opposition figures has their own area of responsibility. Yashin turned out to be the peacemaker among them.
Well, I think, of course, we need to sit down at the negotiating table. I do understand, of course, the irritation from the Ukrainian side when the question is put this way.
But what does it mean to sit down at the negotiating table? It means acknowledging that these territories, Crimea, Donbass, and the partially occupied Zaporizhia and Kherson regions won't be returned in the foreseeable future. What does negotiating table mean?
The negotiating table means a cessation of hostilities. The negotiating table means discussing the viewpoints that are currently clashing on the battlefield.
Peace negotiations are exactly what the Kremlin has been loudly demanding for the past year. Moreover, Yashin is proposing precisely Putin's version of peace. Just stop shooting and leave everything as it is. Sign yet another Minsk III, and then head off to the dacha to steam the samovar with your boot. Where am I, anyway? But just who does Yashin suggest Ukraine should negotiate peace with? With the regime that put Yashin himself in prison for 8.5 years just because he called on people not to kill Ukrainians? Yashin is no fool. He knows exactly what he's saying. So either they chipped him with a pine nut in prison, or he's deliberately playing along with the Kremlin, mindlessly spreading its narratives. It was especially cynical to hear that peace with Russia is needed so that people stop dying.
I fully understand that Ukraine will not recognize the loss of its territories. But it seems to me that if a negotiation process is announced, a ceasefire, that's still better than war. Because at least people will stop dying in this utterly senseless meat grinder assaults.
Great! Ukraine is supposed to give up its territories on its own so that Russian boys stop dying in meat grinder assaults. Not even Putin could have come up with that, even on mushrooms. And what about the millions of Ukrainians who will remain hostages to the murderer marauders on the occupied territories? And what will happen to the murderers and marauders who have been rampaging in Ukraine for almost 3 years? Act in the best traditions of the Russian opposition, forget and forgive?
Understand completely and also forgive.
Then Yashin finally got sick from the fresh air and declared that peace with Moscow would actually benefit Ukraine.
I understand Ukraine's argument that a pause through negotiations would give Putin a chance to prepare for a new war. But I just want to remind you that the Minsk agreements gave Ukraine the opportunity to prepare for war in exactly the same way. It must be said that during those 8 years that Ukraine gained thanks to the Minsk agreements, Ukraine built an army.
We will be able to prepare for the next Russian attack. Great! Excellent plan. According to Yashin, Ukrainians love living in the intervals between wars. The whole world is preparing for the Olympic Games, and we are preparing for war. Yashin thinks it's normal to live in constant fear of another Bucha happening. It's normal to plan your life only one day ahead. It's normal to send your child to school without being sure that the school will still be standing by the end of the year. It's normal to attract investment to a country that could be attacked at any moment by a nuclear gas station. No, it's not normal. Ukraine signed a bunch of agreements with Russia, and Moscow broke all of them, including Minsk. So this proposal...
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I've ever heard.
The second head of the Zmigorinic Kara-Murza started whitewashing the Russian people right from the start. The Russian liberals have been spinning this slime and snot around their finger for 3 years now. This is Putin's war, and the Russian people.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault.
Karamurza, after serving time in a penal colony where he was sent amid the gleeful cheers of innocent Russian citizens, came out and declared that sanctions should be lifted from Russia so that ordinary Russians wouldn't suffer.
Frankly, very often the extensive sanctions imposed by Western democratic countries, particularly those with significant global influence, end up being directed not solely against Putin's authoritarian regime and specific high-ranking criminals within the upper echelons of his corrupt regime, but rather against the entire country, against all ordinary Russian citizens. And this, in my considered opinion, is not only extremely and profoundly unfair, but also demonstrably counterproductive in achieving its stated objectives.
Moreover, Karamurza will fight with all his might to have the sanctions lifted.
The main focus of his work in this international arena is precisely to remind people in democratic countries, people in the free world, that Russia and Putin are not the same thing. And sanctions should be calibrated in such a way that they are targeted specifically at the criminals and at Putin's regime, not at ordinary citizens of the Russian Federation, simply on the basis of their Russian citizenship.
Putin is not just a man, he's a 100-armed hydra with a turbocharger in one place. How did he alone manage to orchestrate the massacre near Kyiv, bomb Mariupol, level the cities of Donbas and Kharkiv region to the ground, torture and kill prisoners, steal children, and at the same time work around the clock to churn out shells and weapons for the front? And the hundreds of thousands of Russians who invaded Ukraine with weapons, the millions who served the occupiers' army, the tens of millions who are living large off the blood money earned from killing Ukrainians.
Like their grandfathers and great-grandfathers, he fought fascism.
In memory of my grandfather, I'm telling you, we bought a brand new car.
The new Lada was bought with what people call funeral money.
Millions who get off watching destruction and suffering in Ukraine on television, and millions more who stay silent in their felt boots, pretending nothing is happening.
No conversations about this topic. No conversations about this topic. Why? Well, we don't talk about politics.
All of them are absolutely innocent.
That's just how it turned out, guys. Time has chosen you. Once again, the enemy, just like before, has become a threat to us.
You see, there's no need to make life harder for Russians, so they can keep traveling freely, studying in the West, using technology, so that everything is fine for them in Russia. Prices don't go up, and iPhones are still sold. This is one of the most despicable positions. And Kara-Murza is not the first opposition figure to promote the idea of innocent Russians.
A person who just sits on the couch and watches is not guilty, he bears responsibility. But the one who is guilty is the one who pulled the trigger, the one who gave the orders, and the one who incited hatred. Yes, it's important here. That is, it's not about guilt, but there is still responsibility. Because these are the armed forces of the Russian Federation, they act in the name of the Russian Federation. All citizens of Russia are responsible for this. Are they responsible without being guilty? Well, they are responsible.
Moreover, for them, Russians are even more of a victim than Ukrainians.
Putin's recent mobilization now truly threatens so many innocent people with such truly terrible and devastating things.
And again, the mantra about lifting sanctions from Rashatis is just repeating Kremlin propaganda. Word for word.
And Putin also wants the sanctions lifted.
Naturally, this also implies the removal of all Western sanctions against Russia.
Coincidence? I don't think so.
Of course, a perfect score from Putin and a sugar cube rightly goes to Pivovarov, who declared that he remains loyal to the Russian fascist state and considers it unacceptable to support the armed forces of Ukraine.
As for supporting the military forces specifically, unfortunately, that's unacceptable for me because, after all, yes, I remain a Russian politician. Yes.
Checkmate, common sense. Naturally, other so-called fighters against the Putin regime supported these so-called fighters. Like Yulia Latinina, for example, who got offended at Ukrainians for completely tearing apart the liberated Trinity for their despicable stance. All of this is a cardboard opposition. In fact, you can't even call it opposition, because it doesn't put up any fight at all. The Kremlin has broken it, crushed it, and basically taken it over.
There will come an understanding that, well, it's impossible any other way.
Under Putin's regime, the liberal opposition has only two options: either go to prison or go on YouTube to collect likes, subscribers, and donations. Katz went even further and basically turned his reviews into a show.
We should try to hold an auction with you. What do you think of this idea? I don't know. No, there will be more. There will be more questions after the auction. It's just that we haven't tried this yet. I don't know. Should we try it now? But I don't know if there's any real interest in this at all.
Here it is, the monetization of war in all its glory. But that doesn't mean there aren't other ways to fight. And it doesn't mean there isn't another Russian opposition. There is, and it has taken up arms against the Kremlin Nazis.
We are coming to free you from poverty, destitution, and fear. To free you from the dictatorship of a terrorist organization that has seized power.
Dictators never give up their power peacefully. You can't defeat them in elections. You can't bring them to justice. Dictators only understand force. The RDK, the Freedom of Russia Legion, and the Siberian Battalion are real opponents of the Dwarf Führer and his regime.
This is essentially a continuation of the discussion about good Russians. Do they exist? Of course they do. Those who have taken up arms and are fighting as part of Ukrainian units, these are several thousand Russian citizens who have been battling Putin's aggression since 2014.
It's strange to watch Russian opposition figures who have served time in prison for their political beliefs still believe that power can be changed through political means.
Of course. Of course.
It's even more foolish to believe that the Russian people, mired in chauvinistic frenzy, will suddenly become kind and constructive. As if once Yashin comes to power, Russians will immediately stop hating everyone around them.
There is no such thing as a Russian face. Everyone here is of the same nationality. I'm not going anywhere near that water. You might catch some kind of gonorrhea from those people.
Right now, there's a high chance that the released opposition figures will move to social media and start making money off trending topics. Don't be surprised if some of them even obediently put a disclaimer that they're foreign agents, just like some of their opposition colleagues do. After spending more than 2 years in prison for their beliefs, earning respect and political weight under the harshest conditions, they managed to squander it all in a single press conference. Putin really did pull off a remarkably successful exchange. He brought his notorious killers back home and, in a calculated move, sent 3 more insidious torpedoes loaded with his deceptive narratives into the unsuspecting Western world.
I'll just give everyone a really big round of applause right now.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.